Good evening to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I am your host, Marianne Petrie. You can find me, my books, and blogs on dismantlingfamilycourtcorruption.com as well as on Amazon. And the books are also on audio as well. I'm very happy to introduce a brand new guest, William Sewell from South Carolina. He is in a custody dispute for the last 2 years in an illegitimate courtroom known as family court. Now, on Monday, he has court where the judge will discuss custody, child support, and other financial issues. His case is very similar to mine, where the judge is running the courtroom as a three-ring circus. Now, his first attorney did not represent him very well, and William lost trust in him, and he had to let him go. So now he's a pro se litigant. There's also corruption and collusion in this case. And the very thing that has happened to all parents that I've talked to is they can co-parent and work well together until an attorney gets involved. And I welcome you, William Sewell. I am so happy to have you on because your case is very similar to mine, how it has played out. And
Thank
you
you.
also are an only child, such as myself, and no other living relatives. I totally get it. And you also have an only child. So I welcome you to the podcast.
Thank
Tell
you.
me
Thank you very much.
more.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. My daughter, DKS, she's 7 and she's the most important thing in the world to me. She's all I've got right now.
That's a precious age. And they're so impressionable. Now, tell me when you had a court order and you had dropped your daughter off. How did she behave?
Well, when this, excuse me, when this began, uh, this began back in October of 2022. We were at a music festival. Uh, we were all consuming alcoholic beverages and things of that nature. And at some point in the evening, my wife decided to take our daughter back to the tent in the campground, which was on the other side of the campground from where the music festival took place, and put her to bed. And a little later on, she showed back up where we were near the music festival with beers. And no daughter with her. She had left our daughter alone in the tent on the other side of the campground at 4 years old. And so shortly thereafter, we had all returned back to the tent, and there was a false accusation made that that evening I had uh, shoved my wife and assaulted her when that isn't exactly how it happened, but I ended up leaving the campground and going home. And 2 or 3 days later, they showed back up here at the home with a Dorchester County patrol officer, and she took all of her belongings and left, and took my daughter. For almost 2 weeks, I didn't see her, talk to her, or get to interact with her any at all. Finally, when I did get to see her again, we spent the afternoon together. And when that first drop off, I guess, if you will, took place, my daughter was extremely upset. She wanted me to stay, she wanted me to stick around. She didn't want to stop hugging me and kissing me. And when her mother, basically said it's time to go, and she took her, she kind of lost her temper a little bit. She hit my ex-wife, or soon-to-be ex-wife, in the mouth. And when the door was closed, she tore the blinds down just so she could see me leave. And she was very noticeably upset that Daddy couldn't stick around. And over this last 2 years that sort of feeling in her and that sort of fire, I guess, in her to want to be with her father has over time noticeably gotten dimmer and dimmer over time, unfortunately.
Hmm.
So we talked back and forth. She actually she sent me a text message. I've got it labeled on my phone as the divorce text, and says that she wants to co-parent, and she says that she wants to do what's best for our daughter. And despite us being able to remain in a marriage together, she wants to work with me to do whatever's the best for our daughter. And I agreed with her at that point. And we actually communicated. There was obviously a little bit of caution in our communications, noticeable caution, considering the circumstances, but we were communicating together, texts and phone calls. Nothing inappropriate was being said or done at this point. It was just both of us were being extremely cautious under the circumstances. But we did spend my daughter's birthday together. We did continue with family traditions together, going to the beach together as a family. We met at the beach. We went to my daughter's birthday party together, me and my ex-wife and my daughter. And yeah, we were kind of like just a family apart at that point in time. We were going to dinners together to my daughter's favorite restaurant, and I thought that things were going to work out the way that you would expect them to when a couple divorces or separates and they work through their problems together and they keep the minor child separate from those problems and try to keep the impact of what's going on from affecting the child. I thought all of that was going to work out. And so I hired an attorney. Her name was Kate Schmutz out of Charleston, South Carolina. And I borrowed $5,000 from my stepfather to pay her. And immediately I could kind of tell something wasn't right. It seemed like she was very comfortable with communicating with my soon to be ex wife's attorney, Donnie Gamache. Um, I think her statement to me, or when I mentioned his name and who she had hired, she says, "Yes, I know Donnie very well. He won't mess with me. He knows I don't play those games." And sort of a back and forth for a few months. She wasn't really doing anything for me
Hmm.
that represented my daughter's best interests. She wasn't, she didn't drug test my wife. She didn't have my wife tested for alcohol that I had requested her do. There was a lot of alcohol abuse involved. There was a lot of drug use involved. And she had stated to me that if I gave her $20,000, that she would take that route, is what she said to me. And knowing that I didn't have $20,000, but we were court ordered to mediate within 120 days of that initial order, and it got ignored by Kate. I was sending her emails and asking her on the phone to get the mediation scheduled so that we could progress through the case. That the only offers that Leslie and Donnie Gamache were bringing to the table were essentially half of everything I have and nothing of hers. And we'll give you joint custody, but we want you to pay child support. And bear in mind, I'm a mechanic. I make a modest blue collar salary.
Hmm.
My Leslie is an advanced nurse practitioner and an osteopathic. And she has a list of certifications a mile long. She also owns her own private practice and sees patients out of her home. So she makes a significant income. And I just got applied or approved for food subsidy so that I can afford to pay for food. So I've got healthy food when my daughter comes to see me. So those things are all very ironic that that's the only offer that they brought to the table. Um, Almost a year goes by and no progression. All of my requests are being ignored by Kate Schmutz. I start seeking another attorney. I decided to reach out to an attorney that was in Beaufort, South Carolina, a little far out of town,
Mhm.
thinking that maybe if I reached out to an attorney that was out of town, there might be less connections there and I might have a better chance at, a good representation. And unfortunately, I hired Jonathan Lewis is his name, and out of Beaufort, South Carolina, and he was no different than any of the rest. Uh, he sits on the ethics board of the South Carolina Bar Association, which makes this even better. And he told me that he would represent me for $7,500 flat rate fee for the entire divorce. So I borrowed that money from my stepmother, and I paid him in full up front. And as soon as I hired him, all of the same behaviors. He actually got aggressive with me several times on the phone. I recorded those conversations. Um, he didn't tell me that he needed affidavits from my witnesses. He didn't plan or prep anything for me for any of the hearings. The first hearing that we went to um, was with a Judge Murphy. I believe Michael Murphy is the judge's name, and it all seemed very planned out, I
Mhm.
guess, for a lack of a better term.
Mhm.
And when we walked in, the judge and Jonathan and opposing counsel decided that it was in my best interests to close that case based on the 365-day rule. And um, within minutes of the closing of the hearing, Donnie Gamache had already had the paperwork ready to go, pre-planned, and walked right back into the clerk's office same day within minutes of that hearing and refiled and made my wife lead the and me the defense.
You kind of broke up there. Can you please repeat that?
Yes, sorry. Within minutes of the hearing ending, Gamache or his his legal assistant refiled for divorce, making my wife Leslie the plaintiff and me the defendant. And I did not know anything about it until much later. No one told me about it. The next thing I know, I'm being served these orders, and my attorney, Jonathan Lewis, says that we've got a temporary hearing coming up. So I wasn't asked to prepare for the temporary hearing. I wasn't asked for character witness statements. I wasn't asked for any evidence. I wasn't asked for anything. I literally showed up to the temporary hearing. Jonathan Lewis arrived about 5 minutes prior to the doors opening to the courtroom and told me to sign his paperwork or fire him, is what he said. And I indicated to him that I couldn't sign his paperwork, that I had never read it, and I didn't know what was in it. And he said, then you need to do a little less ready or a little less talky and a little more ready, I believe is his exact words. He was very aggressive with me. He was noticeably shaky. And I sat down and I started to thumb through the paperwork in the hallway of the courtroom, right outside the courtroom doors. And the courtroom doors opened and they called our names. And Jonathan said, "You need to sign this paperwork or you can fire me." So I ran through and I initialed everything as fast as I could, thinking that that's what I had to do to keep from getting in trouble.
Mm.
And I walked into the courtroom, and Jonathan Lewis sat at the courtroom at the table in the courtroom with his arms over a sheet of paper and allowed Donnie Gamache to tell the judge that I had never paid child support, that I was a drug addict, that I was an alcoholic, that I was abusive, that I was a deadbeat dad, all of these nasty lies about me. And Jonathan did not object. He had nothing to say. Um, I had proof that I had paid child support since the day this began, as was ordered of me by the courts, and he didn't bring any of it up to the judge. He didn't object to anything. He literally just sat there and stared at the paper in front of him. When it was his turn to talk, he stood up and he said a few words and said something about opposing counsel being sour grapes or something of that nature along those lines, something completely irrelevant. And that was it. And the judge, Mandy Kimmons was the judge's name. She ordered me to leave the court and be drug tested, hair follicle tested, alcohol test, and a PEth test by 5 p.m. that day at my cost. And so I did. I left the courtroom immediately and I went to Mount Pleasant to, I believe it was an any lab test now location in Mount Pleasant. And I did a hair follicle test, a 10 panel drug test, a PEth test, a blood test, everything at a cost of around $1,000. And I sat and waited. I went home. Everything went silent. 14 days go by, and I receive an order from Jonathan Lewis that Donnie Gamache was allowed to prepare and have the judge sign, that gave my wife sole legal and physical custody of my daughter. I had all negative tests. They had provided 3 affidavits, one by my wife, Leslie, one by her mother, Karen Brown, and one by a friend of hers named Megan Jarbo, that were filled with lies. And the judge had this picture painted that I was this drug addict, alcoholic, abusive husband and father. And she took custody of my daughter from me for absolutely no reason whatsoever. They did what they did sort of behind closed doors. And at the bottom of the order that I received 14 days after the hearing, it said that if I wanted to reconsider, I had to notify the court within 10 days. So my attorney, Jonathan Lewis, and Donnie Gamache intentionally withheld the paperwork until it was after the deadline of when I could reconsider. So we move on from there.
I hope they have good malpractice insurance.
I'm not sure. Oh, and by the way, that flat rate attorney retainer fee and agreement that Jonathan Lewis sent to me for the $7,500, I never signed it. So he was representing me this entire time negligently, without a formal agreement or without a retainer agreement or a contract of any kind.
Perfect.
And in the state of South Carolina, under circumstances specifically relating to flat rate fee agreements, there has to be a signed agreement. So he misrepresented me for over a year without an agreement. So moving on, after custody had been taken from me in the temporary order, um, the previous order that we were operating under, where I was the plaintiff and Leslie was the defendant, that got closed for 365-day rule, I was allowed a 4-week visitation to take outside of my normal visitation throughout the year. When they closed the first divorce and reopened the second one, at this point, they claimed I could no longer have that time because that was part of the first divorce. And now we're under a new divorce. where Leslie's the plaintiff and I'm the defendant, and I have to schedule those dates with her. And they also took one of my overnight visits away. So originally it was Friday at 6 p.m. to Monday morning, and I was taking her to the sitter's home. And now it's Friday at 6 p.m. to Sunday at 6. And I've tried to take that time with my wife and schedule those dates. And unfortunately, she's refused to give those dates to me, utilizing formalities and procedural issues, claiming that I didn't notify her in time and things of that nature. So
But you have a judge's order for these visits, correct?
I do. I have a judge's order that states that I get this time and these dates, um, and she is using those orders and sort of interpreting them in her own way,
Does
I
she
guess you could
realize
say.
she can't interpret what the judge has ordered because there's a thing called custodial interference, which is if she withholds the child and doesn't let you see, her against, the judge's order, that's actually a felony kidnapping. She may not know this, but also law enforcement doesn't know these things as well because they have not been trained in the police academy regarding custodial interference and these laws that have been on the books for 40 years. So she's actually committing a felony. She just doesn't know it yet.
And when you're dealing with a person like me that has a paid attorney that's not representing my best interests, he's not going to do anything for me that's going to sort of benefit my case. He's going to do exactly what he needs to do to not ruffle the feathers of opposing counsel, almost like he's doing them a favor. So, uh, getting things back on track, I had gotten to a point where I just could not trust Jonathan Lewis any longer. The way he had treated me and the fact that he was ignoring evidence in the case and he was not representing my best interests or my daughter's best interests, um, unprepared for hearings. He was noticeably colluding with the other attorney and laying down and not doing what he should have been doing, which was fighting for me and my rights and fighting for my daughter. Um, I had to let him go. And so
Mhm.
I hired a third attorney. And once again, I borrowed money.
Mm.
At this point, I believe I borrowed $11,000 to pay an attorney named William Clifford of North Charleston, South Carolina. And William Clifford, mind you, is an ex-JAG officer, and he's one of the most senior attorneys in this area. He's been representing clients for over 40 years in family law and military law as well. And I thought for sure that I would finally find someone that would help and represent my best interests and the best interests of my daughter. And he started doing the same things the other attorneys did. Um, he would call me in for meetings that didn't really accomplish anything in his office. He would claim that he spent hours going through paperwork, what he considered or what he called a banker's box of documents. He said that he got a huge box of unorganized documents from my previous attorney and that he had to go through all of them and organize them in order to have a grasp on the case and know how to represent me and know what the content of the case was. And I had gone to the clerk of the court and purchased an entire file from the court in chronological order, stamped and signed by the clerk of the court, and provided it to him and told him, here's the whole case. You don't need to go through anything. And I have everything else saved on my computer at home chronologically, photographs, statements, and everything. So you don't need to do this. But he did it anyway. And he utilized several $1,000s in attorney's fees, charging me to just go through paperwork, as he put it. And we had countless numbers of meetings in his office that when I showed up, it would just turn into him telling me that he was going to do X, Y, and Z, and then the conversation would trail off into something that had no relevance to what we were doing. And it would be a wasted meeting. And all three of these attorneys that I had hired, when I walked in the door, promised me the world and promised me that they would represent my best interests and that they would fight Donnie Gamache to the end and they would do what's best for me and my daughter. And by the end of their representation, none of them were doing anything they said they were going to do. And it's almost like they flipped the script on you and they employ some sort of a false narrative on the client, claiming that the client is hostile or claiming that the client doesn't do what they recommend or claiming that the client doesn't listen or that the client is combative or any number of other identifications to sort of place a false narrative on the client and remove the light from themselves and their misrepresentation. And then they'll just simply file a motion to be relieved and
Mhm.
it gets awarded. And then they're on to represent their next client, taking thousands of your dollars, having done nothing for you and not done what they said they were going to do.
And I'm so glad you said all of that because this is essential for every parent to listen to and to know that this is what these attorneys are doing. I think they're worse than the judges. But like we were talking earlier, I think the judges are at fault, if not worse as well.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. It seems in the hearings, whenever we're in front of the judge, and obviously, having proof in family court is a necessity. But another thing you'll quickly realize is that things like perjury are allowed in family court.
Oh, yes.
And those types of things are not held accountable. And so things like my wife Leslie contacting my character witnesses and telling them that I stabbed her in the back and that they shouldn't be helping me, trying to influence them. That's a felony. It's called obstruction of justice. And things like lying during a deposition, where she says in a deposition that she never cheated on me or committed adultery during our marriage, when me and two of my friends caught her with another woman during our marriage, and she committed adultery during our marriage just prior to us finding out that she was pregnant with our daughter. Um,
Mm.
she lied in a temporary, or she lied in the temporary hearing about me never paying child support. And so we questioned her in the deposition, and she said, "Yeah, that was my mistake. I made a mistake." So lying in family court is seemingly allowed
Mhm.
when the courts are almost seemingly working with the person that's trying the case. Things are getting over, things are getting swept under the rug. Um, I was even improperly served those temporary orders where I lost custody of my daughter. I wasn't even home. I was at a neighbor's house having dinner, and Donnie Gamache hired a process server to serve me. And they came into my home while I was not here and left the paperwork on the floor. And so I came home after I saw a car leaving my driveway to see what was going on. And I went into my home and I found the paperwork lying in the floor in my home. And later I saw in a court document where the court was notified that I was properly served. So I have filed a motion to have that order struck due to inappropriate service, but that motion has not yet been heard, and the final hearing is coming up on Monday, and we have yet to have a pre-trial hearing. So it is my understanding that it is a South Carolina law to have a pre-trial hearing before a final hearing to ensure that the case is ready to be heard,
Mhm.
that everything is fair and even, that both parties have what they need to have to try their case. And unfortunately, that hasn't been done. And I'm going into a final hearing now after firing my last attorney. Now I'm representing myself pro se. I don't know very much of anything about the law.
Mhm.
The 14th of this past month was when my attorney was relieved by the court. And now here we are, June 6th, maybe a couple of 3 weeks later. I'm going into a hearing on Monday morning by myself against, a very seasoned attorney and a list of character witnesses, and I have no idea what I'm up against. I'm sure it's not going to be good, but I'm doing everything I can to prepare, but I don't know what I'm doing. So it's almost like they put me in this position intentionally to try and run me out of money, and then when I didn't have any more money, uh, put me into a final hearing without representation and come after me. Um,
And
so
I'm
we did
glad you
have a
brought that
guardian.
up. I'm so sorry. I'm glad you brought that up. That is another tactic that these family court bad actors will install is they will have the target parent pay all this money and then go to the next attorney, only to have them torpedo the case, pay all that money to get a new attorney. Because I went through, I think it was bleed three or four. And this is what they do to everybody. So I hope all these parents are listening to you. Keep
Yes.
going.
Yes. So I failed to mention that there is another attorney involved, a guardian at Litem. He's an attorney out of Charleston. His name is Jason Wheeler, and he got involved, court appointed. He's come to my home and he's seen me here with my daughter, and he's been to my wife's home and seen her with my daughter. And his report is complete. He says that both parents are fit, that both homes are very suitable for the child, and that the child adores both parents.
Mhm.
And yet, the court wants to grant the guardian ad litem, or has granted the guardian ad litem, a $25,000 fee cap increase for the final hearing. When he says that his job is done, the court enables him to continue to earn 25,000 more dollars to be able to be a part of the hearing, when all he has to do is submit his inspection or his investigation. Um, Keep in mind, there has been so much evidence that has been ignored, negligent behavior. My wife's taken my daughter to a rock show and not made her wear hearing protection, and I mean a rock and roll show. Front front row, speakers blaring in her ears. She's taken her hunting, dove hunting, and then been in a field surrounded by people shooting up in the air around her with shotguns and had no protective equipment on her.
Mhm.
She's been bitten by dogs multiple times at the caregiver's home. The caregiver, she has adopted dogs, I guess it is, where she fosters a dog for a period of time. And she's been bitten 3 separate times by 3 separate dogs at this home, and no measures have been taken whatsoever to ensure my daughter's safety at this location.
How does she have
I've had
time to
witness.
even babysit these dogs while she's working out of the
This is
home?
at the caregiver's home. So this is my wife is seeing patients at her home, and she's also working at an urgent care in Walterboro, South Carolina, while my daughter's being cared for by a friend of hers, or babysitted by a friend of hers named
Hmm.
Trisha. I'm sorry, I believe Trisha Burke is her name, and she has these fostered animals at her home. And three of the dogs that are at her home have bitten my daughter. So, under the advisement or the advice of my pastor at my church, he recommended that I go talk to someone at DSS and see if I could get some help at DSS for my daughter. So I did, and I went to DSS here in Somerville. And as soon as I arrived, I spoke to one of the lead investigators, and I sat down with her in her office, and she indicated to me that I did not need to file a report, that I just needed to tell her what's happened. And so I did. I told her what was happening, and I told her who the attorneys were involved, and she indicated to me that she knows Donnie Gamache very well, the way that she put it to me. We work with Donnie Gamache all the time, she said.
Oh, God.
So I showed her the photographs of everything that I had, the bruises and the dog bites and the bug bites, and my daughter covered in blood. And she said, "You don't need to do anything. I'll take care of everything for you. We'll make sure that your daughter is safe from here on out." So she sent me on my way. And the next day, I was notified by her that I needed to go to the Dorchester County Sheriff's Office and give an interview to a Sergeant Baker, I believe was his name, at the Dorchester County Sheriff's Office at 212 Deming Way. So I went, and much to my surprise, the sergeant had spoken with Donnie Gamache.
Could you please repeat
Donnie
that because
Gamache,
you broke up just a tad?
sorry, much to my surprise, the sergeant that I went to interview with at Dorchester County Sheriff's Office had spoken with Donnie Gamache. So Donnie Gamache used to be a sheriff in Dorchester County, and he now works as an attorney in the same town. So he has a lot of mutual connections in this town. And when I arrived to give my interview to this Dorchester County Sheriff Officer or Sergeant Baker, he justified everything. He said that the bruises are child's play. He said that your daughter's allergic to mosquito bites, and that's why she's got all the bug bites all over her body. And your daughter likes dogs, and so she's going to get bitten. And when I showed him the affidavits that I had that indicated people witnessing my daughter or my wife giving my daughter alcohol,
Mhm.
he justified that by saying that it's legal in the state of South Carolina for a parent to give their child alcohol. So, what's your next question? So, that interview went absolutely nowhere. And about a week and a half, 2 weeks later, I received a notification in the mail that the investigation was complete by DSS and that everything was justified. A little bit later on in the hearing, in a hearing at the courthouse, Donnie decides to use that against me, claiming that I'm making false reports. So, just a little bit more insight into how the connections in this system, how the connections with local law enforcement and the connections with DSS and the connections with the judges and the connections with other attorneys all have sort of a way of sort of like a tree limb effect. These are all limbs of the same tree, and they all communicate together and work together to ensure that the roots get water. So they have to feed the tree.
Right. And they're essentially helping their friends, friends, friends.
They
And
are. These attorneys use each other for
yes,
guardian ad litem work. They use each other for mediator work. They bounce clients back and forth off of each other to earn thousands and thousands of dollars. And these mediations, they end up going absolutely nowhere. The mediators tell you before the mediation happens that I settle 90% of my cases and mediation, and there's no way this will go to a final hearing. And then you go to the mediation and nothing works out. And the mediator says to you, I'm at an impasse. Sorry, I can't help. And they file their report to the court and they take your money and move on to the next client. And here you are with an attorney, an opposing counsel saying, Your Honor, we tried to mediate, but he's not willing to do anything. He's not willing to work anything out. When they walked into the room and slapped an offer on the table that benefits only their client and says, sign it or else. And here I am on this side saying, I want shared custody of my daughter,
Hmm.
and I want to be a part of my daughter's life, and I want transparency and honesty on the side of all of the financial stuff. And here are all my tax records, and here are all my pay stubs. And I'm happy to show anyone anything they want to see about my life, my business, the money I make. I want it to be honest. I just want to take care of my child and I want to be a part of my child's life. I don't want to be an every other weekend dad. I want to be in my daughter's life. I want to help raise her. I want to help educate her. I want to take her to her first this and I want to take her to her first that. And I want to be there when she goes to prom. And I want to be a part of all of these things.
Hmm.
I want her to come to dad when she's got a problem at school, or I want her to come to dad when she's not sure about something,
Right.
or anything like that. I don't want to be that dad that he picks up his daughter on Friday and finds out about the last 2 weeks of things happening. It's just not, it's child trafficking. It's like they're just taking my child away from me. It's like they've stolen my child away from me, and she's my only living relative.
Hmm.
She's my only child, and I can never have another one. And it's crazy that these courts and these attorneys have this much power to force you, to extort you out of all of your money and take your child from you based on lies. And it may have not even have been the lies that caused it. It may have just been a pre-planned decision to just take the child away anyway and just claim that they're placing her out of caution, taking precautionary measures with the mother. And it seems so wrong when I'm a loving father and I take care of my child and I care for her and I do everything that I can with her in the short period of time that I have with her. And I'm swimming in a pool filled with sharks that are trying to ruin the rest of my life. And I just don't know what to do.
Well, you had also mentioned that she had hooked up with another woman.
Yes, she
So
had.
did they break up? Did she hook up with another woman after that?
Well, so that was part of, I guess, the initial what ended up eroding away at the marriage. That happened about 8 years ago when she cheated on me with another woman. It was a woman that I worked with actually, and she started making out with this woman when we were out that evening in front of me and all of my friends, just blatantly. And then later that evening, when we were at my friend's home, they locked themselves in a bedroom and got in the bed together. And after we realized that they were missing, we went and we accessed the room and we caught them together. And she never really admitted to doing anything wrong. In her eyes, all she did was kiss a girl.
But that's
So
not
she
setting
never,
a good example for her daughter if her daughter should see something like that.
yeah, I mean, our daughter, we weren't, she wasn't pregnant at the time, but we found out that we were pregnant with our daughter soon after this event took place. And so I kind of in my own mind put it aside. I sort of compartmentalized it
Mm-hmm.
and tried to move past it. It was difficult. I lost a lot of trust in the relationship when that happened, but because I was about to have my first and only child, it was so important to me to progress and to move forward. That's what I did. I did what I had to do, and we had our daughter, and things kind of, you know, it was always difficult to move on, but we did what we had to do, and we kind of moved on. Um, since the separation has happened, though, if we're moving forward 5 or 6 years from that event, since the separation has happened, I do have suspicions that she is seeing another woman romantically. She has her at her home regularly. She does her yard work for her, and they go on fossil hunting excursions together, and they spend a lot of free time together. She goes to my wife's home and hangs out and around my daughter and my wife, and they have a fire pit at their home. My daughter tells me that she's there when she's there, and that she stays late and things like that. And she notices these things. And this is a time in my daughter's life when she's very impressionable, I guess is the right term to use, where she sees and notices things, and she normalizes things very easily at that age.
Mm-hmm.
And so the way that my wife acts and the way that my wife treats me, and the environment that she's in without me being there, over time becomes normal to her when it wasn't before. And so here you have this dynamic where you have two people that separate for whatever reason. They're both willing to work together initially, and they want to do what's best interest of the child. And then attorneys get involved. And then the attorneys systematically put these two people against each other. They utilize communication networks like Our Family Wizard. They
Mm-hmm.
make it difficult for the people or the parties to communicate. They put protective orders in place. They use the judicial system itself to kind of cause conflict between these two people, charging them unbelievable amounts of money in attorney's fees and court costs, and take it from a situation that could have been beneficial to a child to a situation where you have two people that are fighting over custody of a child and fighting over property and finances, when it could have been, you keep yours, I keep mine,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
we raise our daughter.
Right.
And now we have a situation where it's, you owe me all of this money for the house, and you owe me all of this money for what you earn, and I'm taking custody of the child, and you're a bad person and I'm not. And it's all just a big, it's a big play. It's a big act being
Right.
put on by the court system and these attorneys.
Right.
And we
Because
are what they call, we're what they call wards. We are a ward of the judicial system.
mm-hmm.
And when we hire these people, we're basically saying we don't know what to do. We're putting our lives and our children's lives and futures in your hands to help us get through this. And they know that. And then they, under the cover of darkness and behind closed doors, plan out what they need to do, get as much money from you as possible, and end up leaving one parent or both parents in ruin
Mm-hmm.
and a child's future destroyed, being without a parent or being without both parents in some circumstances. And before they got involved, it could have all been worked out. And once they got involved, it just all went off the rails. And so now here we are. 2 years into this, there are, I believe, 6 or 7 or maybe even 8 attorneys, family attorneys involved in this. I believe 3 judges are involved. And this has gotten so far out of hand and it's gotten so bad that now I hardly ever see my daughter. I rarely get to speak with her. She is under the care and supervision of a woman that is seeing patients in her home while my daughter's present. Um, she's being bitten by dogs and nothing's being done about it.
Hmm.
She's coming to me covered in sores and it's being overlooked and justified. She's coming to me with consistent injuries. This past summer, she ran into a counter and almost lost her eye. She comes to me with horrible bruises all over her body.
You
Um,
also don't know how much alcohol she's consuming.
well, originally it started out as just giving her a sip. And then it progressed to a point where even my family that was visiting in town was witnessing Leslie giving DKS uh, alcohol to a point where her children were questioning her if that was okay for them. So it was so much so children noticed it and questioned her if what Leslie was doing was okay. And when you're in a developmental stage of a child's life, I mean, that's just completely absurd. I don't know how else to put it.
Hmm. Hmm.
So every attempt that I've made to be a part of my daughter's life has been squashed. Every attempt that I've made to get justice for the things that have been going on and things that have happened have been squashed or covered up or ignored. Evidence has been ignored.
Hmm.
Um, my wife Leslie's committed a felony by contacting uh, my character witnesses and trying to influence them not to be involved. And that's, obstruction of justice is even in a civil case is against the law.
Well, on
Uh,
top of the custodial interference, felony kidnapping, hello.
yeah, felony
Hello, Pam
kidnapping,
Bondi.
absolutely. There's a term that's used in this system that's tiptoed around. It's called parental alienation.
Hmm.
And it's tiptoed around by the courts because they don't like to hear it. And it's one of those things that they claim is very difficult to prove,
Hmm.
so they don't like to hear it. But when you have a child that's willing to punch an adult and rip blinds off of a wall to be with her father when she's being torn away from him, to 2 years later, phone calls are being met with, Daddy, I don't really want to talk right now because her mother's standing over her,
They
watching
all
her.
do it. They all do it. I've talked to so many parents who have said, okay, in one extreme case, uh, the parent gets a phone call, but they're only allowed to stay on for 1 minute with this child. So this child is just sitting and staring at the screen, then looking up, then looking back, and
That's
then,
exactly what happens to my daughter.
yes, they're all doing it. So these
Yes.
courts are encouraging this child psychological abuse. They can call it parental alienation, but technically it's child psychological abuse, which is in the DSM-5 V995.51. So all these people in this court case, your judges, the third party parasite guardian ad litem, they are all conspirators in this child's demise of child psychological abuse. They're all abusers.
Absolutely. I mean, let's not sugarcoat it. They're child traffickers.
And as well as you, they're trafficking parents for money as well.
Yes, absolutely. When I was in the military, I was in the Coast Guard, and one of my jobs was to stop drug trafficking when I was in the Coast Guard, and we fought the cartel in that process. And they are also child traffickers.
Hmm.
They transport people for money against their will, transporting people for money against their will. Cartel, South Carolina judicial system, transporting people for money. There's a little similarities there. So, I mean, call it what it is. Um, my child, my only child,
Mm.
my only blood relative, um, I'll never be able to have another child, has been taken from me with lies. And
Right.
from, so,
And you were like me, I just wanted 50-50, which is what my sons wanted. So I was kind of laid back about it. I wasn't coming after you with an axe for full custody. Just whatever the kids wanted, as we had been for 10 years prior, just sharing the kids. That's where they're
yes,
happiest.
yes.
I mean,
And
I
that's,
know.
that's,
Oh, go ahead.
no, I was going to say that's all I want is I just want to be equally in my daughter's life. And she knows nothing about what's going on. And she's actually come to me and said, Daddy, why can't I be with you the same amount of time that I'm with mom?
Hmm.
Why can't we just be together the same amounts of time? I come to you and then I go to her. And I told her, I said, well, there is a way that that can happen, sweetheart, but that's something that has to be worked out between mommy and daddy.
Hmm.
And your mother is in control of that, not daddy, because
Right.
that's what they're asking for. And it's just not happening. I'm a big advocate of the 50-50, and that's all I really want. But
Right.
they're doing this over money
Right.
because she makes so much money and I don't make as much money as her.
Then
So,
that should cancel out your child support.
well,
And
if those scales, like the
hmm
scales that are on the wall in the picture behind you, if those
yeah.
scales were even,
Yeah,
like the
right.
scales of justice, then she would be paying me child support.
That's what I was going to say. And if she's going to withhold the child and pull these shenanigans, I think we had talked earlier on the phone where I brought up Morgan versus Morgan in New York State, and this was last year, 2024, February 1st, I believe this came out, this ruling, where the parent wanted to see the child. The child was constantly being withheld. So they took it to a higher court and the child support was suspended. Well, if you're not going to let the parent see the child, then the child support's suspended. And well, personally, I would like to see Title 4D go away as well as B and E and abolish family court.
Agreed.
CPS is just as bad. They're
I
also
think everyone
trafficking.
should represent themselves.
Well, a lot of parents are. There is a legion of pro se litigants because, as you detailed the corruption so beautifully, you eloquently described all of this, beautifully documented this. Parents better listen up and realize your family court attorney will torpedo your case. It's happened to me, it's happened to you. It's
I
not
mean,
going to stop.
even essentially, no, Donnie Gamache is doing his job for my soon-to-be ex-wife Leslie. He's just doing his job. He could have done it ethically and he could have done it fairly, but they don't do that. They
And
just don't.
right, and he's taking part in child psychological abuse where
Absolutely.
he could have sat her down and said, "Look, this guy's reasonable. You have no idea how lucky you are that he's being reasonable. Just work with him." And we can settle, we could drop a settlement, whatever, and detail this, and you don't have to go to court.
You have to realize They don't make money unless this goes to a final hearing. They make money by dragging this out
Right.
and putting people against each other and dragging you through the court system so that you can do what their first oath is. And that is when they become an attorney, they have an oath to support the bar and to support their fellow attorneys. And their clients' best interests don't come first. The bar and the judicial system and each other is what comes first for these attorneys and these judges.
Well, the bar was looked at heavily by Pam Bondi recently, right?
Yes, yes, it was. Um, I since this began, I've spoken to so many people who have gone through exactly what I'm going through, including yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
and I see scars. I see wounds that will never heal. I talk to grown adults that are mentally damaged for the rest of their lives.
Mm-hmm.
I speak to adults that are afraid to even text message someone about their divorce. They put people in hiding.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's incredible the amount of damage that the family court system does to people. And I'm telling you, I see people that are grown adults that are living in the basements of friends' homes that have had their children taken away from them for no reason. I talk to people that have spent over $1 million on their divorce. There's a wonderful man that I've met during all of this. His name is John Gallman. He's up in the Myrtle Beach area, and they have destroyed his life with his children and ran him through the ringer through the court systems, and he has spent over $1 million. That's with an M on his divorce.
Mm-hmm.
And what's it accomplished? His life is still damaged from this divorce, and his children are almost grown out of the system now. They're all grown up, and he's been going through this for years. I, you know, this shouldn't be this way. It should be, you know, everyone should be able to represent themselves pro se. The court system should have measures in place where an office is available for two people to go sit down and talk with an attorney or a mediator or someone to work out all the financials, bring in all of your paperwork. It should be, moderately charged. It shouldn't cost $350 an hour, and even if both parents can't work together, they can work separately in two separate rooms, but there shouldn't be family court.
Right.
It should just be two people sitting down, bringing in all of your finances, a lot like going to get your taxes done at the tax office,
Right.
or going to see a CPA. You should just be able to sit down and work it all out and then raise your children.
Not with a personality disorder. These people, you can't work with them. You can't even co-parent. Well, we had co-parented for 10 years until, he had married a woman that worked in the courthouse who drove the wedge in. But the attorneys started this co-parent counseling where my attorney told me that the co-parent counselor said he's volatile. Okay, so why wasn't that reported to the judge? Why? How did that, fall through the cracks?
And
So
then they
that,
say, do your due process or your due diligence.
mhm.
But people like us, we don't know the law like attorneys do. So, how are we supposed to know what steps are to be taken? Or if we have an attorney and they're not taking the steps for us, it's our fault.
These judges are not following constitutional law. They just
They are
refuse
not.
to. In fact, I know of an attorney who yelled at I'm sorry, I know of a judge who yelled at an attorney, I don't have to follow the Constitution. That made the
Not,
newspaper.
not in family court, they don't.
Well, and that, they will not. That's why it needs to be abolished. People want to reform it. There's no way to reform corruption. I don't know why people can't get this through their heads. You can't reform corruption. It has to be abolished and just use civil court.
Right now, I mean, with the way politics are and the way the government is running through, trying to trying to minimize corruption and trying to clean out our systems that we have in place that run this country. I wish that this was one of the systems that would get cleaned out because it is the most important system to be gone through and regulated and cleaned up because it involves our children,
Hmm.
the next leaders of this country, the
Mm.
next CEOs of companies, the next attorneys that will be representing people just like us are our children. And so, if this is their experience growing up, then what do we expect to have as a country?
More
Children that have
personality
been taken
disorders.
away from their parents.
Right, right, which is installing a personality disorder into the child, along with a shared persecutory delusion, which is the false narrative that that other parent is evil, be afraid of them, and they'll teach them to hate them. So then what they'll do is when they grow up, they will eventually treat another, boyfriend or girlfriend like that. And they want to do this so the family court will still be in operation. So when your kids grow up and get married, chances are they will probably end up in family court to keep the cycle going. So people say this is a broken system when essentially it's working beautifully for them because they're making their friends monies with these third-party parasite guardian ad litems and custody evaluators.
They're creating generational wealth for themselves because
Right.
they know if they do this to this couple 25 years from now, that child's going to do the same thing to their husband or wife. And it's
Hmm.
funny you mentioned this. My mother-in-law, Karen Brown, did the same thing to my wife and her sister's father. They lived in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And when they divorced, it was a nasty divorce. Karen took my wife and her sister and moved across the country, and she took his daughters away from him. And to this very day, those two people, Larry and Karen, don't even want to be in the same state as each other because of that divorce that took place 35 years ago. And now here you have my wife, Leslie, and her sister, Lauren, have both in the last 3 years divorced their husbands, or I'm in the middle of mine now, but Lauren has already divorced her husband. They had 3 children, and now I'm divorcing my wife with one child. So it, it happens here, and then it happens to their children, and then it happens to their children, and then it
Hmm.
happens to their children. So you're right. It imprints into a child's memory, and it damages them for life.
Right,
And
which installs the personality disorder where they also become, for lack of a better word, narcissistic. They don't trust law enforcement. They have no trust at all. And
no,
their thought process, convoluted, cognitive dissonance. These poor young people are so mentally destroyed. And I know they've
agreed.
done studies on what goes on into the brain, the frontal lobes, the hippocampus. That's another podcast. But every parent needs to know, you know, If you can avoid going into family court, try to. But in your case and in my case, when you're dealing with personality disorders, this is not good. Now, um, how do I say this? Some people are homosexual, and that's a preference. I don't have anything against that because I have friends that are homosexual, right?
Doesn't
So I
bother me
can't,
at all.
but even if you were heterosexual, you don't want to be bringing, um, partners so quickly into your life and then get them out quickly and then bring in a new partner. It's too confusing for the child.
Agreed. Absolutely. It's I mean I want all parents to know that out there that this system is not going to help you.
No.
Even if your attorney does everything they're supposed to do and fights for you and you win your case, they didn't help you. Their damage has been done because they didn't they didn't get you to work together. They didn't they didn't focus on the best interests of the child,
Hmm.
and they didn't they didn't end up with two happy people living separately raising a child.
Hmm.
And in the dynamic of it, that is the best interests of the child.
Hmm.
Is when two people don't want to be together anymore, that's fine. It's not the child's fault. Let them be apart, but
Right.
let them both raise their child as that child's parents. Don't take the child away from one or the other. Don't make it financially crippling to one parent or the other or both.
Hmm.
You know, this system doesn't need to take all this money from these people. We all work hard for a living and we earn modest incomes. If we didn't, then it wouldn't be an issue.
Hmm.
But it is, and they force us into these situations where we can barely live. So
Right. See what these parents are doing because they're getting scared. Oh, he or she has them an extra night. They could come after me for more child support, or I'm going to go after that parent for more child support because I've got them 2 extra nights.
right.
They're counting these nights. Like, stop, people. Let the child be able to go here and there. Like mine were tweens, okay, when all this was going on. And if there's vacations, I babysat. I hate to say babysat, but I was with my kids and I was laid back about it. Like, my ex took a 3-week honeymoon with that woman who enjoys her job in the courthouse. So I didn't mind having the kids for 3 weeks. We did a lot. We had so much fun. And however, when the other person remarries or goes on with their life, all hell breaks loose. Okay, people, and that's a pattern.
Yeah. Especially if they have connections in the court system.
Oh, yes, that's helpful. Yes, yes, you've already lost your case. People need to know that. Okay, so anybody who is not married yet, you make sure you do your background checks. You do your due diligence. I don't care if you have to pay a private investigator $5,000. It's worth it. Find out if there's any connections to a courthouse, police department, fire department. I don't care. Who works there could be the mother-in-law's sister. You find this stuff out and don't marry that person because if something bad should go south, you will lose your case.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think I think it's very important that I'm just a father
Mm.
and you're a mother and we just want to be a part of our children's lives and we're sitting here talking about a system that we are paying to destroy that dynamic.
Right,
So
right.
think about it like that. We're paying people to tear our families apart and take our children away from us.
And the
Who wants to be
taxpayer,
a part of that?
right, and the taxpayer needs to know this. So, I had moved to a different area and now they were doing voting for judges and everyone had their judge signs out on their yards. And it's like, but I don't know what that judge does. I mean, I can't research. if that guy's in family court, how long has he been in family court? Is he in criminal court? I don't know anything about these judges. So people like our judges are elected, some are appointed, and in some states, the judge is appointed and you're stuck with them. I don't know.
I don't know either.
Yeah,
I,
so
like I
this,
said, I don't know anything about the law. I don't know anything about the legal system. And I've been forced into a situation where I'm representing myself pro se with almost no time to prepare, not knowing how to prepare. I don't know how to prepare evidence. I don't know how to examine a witness. I don't know how to
oh,
cross examine a witness. I'm not an attorney.
we'll
Um,
talk after this podcast.
yeah, yeah. I mean, here we go. It's if anybody's out there that can offer me any help, I've got one weekend. It starts on Monday, and the court system's not giving me any information. They're not telling me what the schedule for the hearing is. I've got people coming in from out of town to help me as witnesses that have special needs child, and they've rented a home for the entire week and had to pay a special needs caregiver to come with them to take care of their child while they're in court. And the court system will not give me any indication as to what I need to tell them when they need to be present. It's like they're making it as difficult as possible. They're forcing sort of a procedural nightmare on me that I have no idea how to get out of or get through. And it's all for profit. That's all
Right.
it is. And they don't care about what people have to go through. If I had a normal job, if I wasn't self-employed, I would have lost my job by now because of how many appointments I've had to make and how many hearings I've had to attend and how much time I've had to spend at home researching documents and
Mm,
paperwork and going through emails and taking photographs of things. It's unbelievable. In the last 2 years, I've probably had almost 3 or 4 months of time consolidated off work just dealing with this system and
hmm.
this process. And like I said, if I had a normal job, I would have lost it by now. And I would be
Oh,
without a job and
oh,
probably
right.
without a home or anything.
Well, if it wasn't for my current husband, I would have no home. And because through false allegations, they caused me to lose my job as a registered nurse of 23 years. So this is the lengths people will go to destroy the other parent. And I always tell people, okay, so just because you're divorcing doesn't mean you have to run into a courtroom. Why don't you just sit back and talk? Or, if you can't go to, a good mediator, if there's such a thing, I don't know. I'm not giving legal advice because there's no such thing as good legal advice. But try to work it out within yourselves. You don't want to pay into this court system at all.
No, you don't.
Now, the
I mean,
only
just
good, oh, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, I mean, looking at things where we are now, I think that she's probably invested somewhere in the ballpark of $50,000. I've invested somewhere in the ballpark of a little over $30,000. And this is where we are today. I have no custody of my daughter whatsoever. I simply have a very small window of visitation and phone calls. And this has gone from, and I'll read the text message. At this point, I want to work with you and figure out the best way to move forward with what is best for our daughter. I want to be able to co parent with you and give her the best life possible despite us not being able to remain married. I am open to hearing your thoughts on how to decide about division and assets, custody, visitation, etc. I really do not want to argue or fight about these things. So that is a divorce text that she sent me when this began. And now
Oh,
here we are, seemingly over $80,000 in the hole. I've lost my daughter. I barely get to see her. Her future is probably destroyed now at this point. She's been manipulated. She's been abused. She's been neglected. I mean, there's nothing good that's come from any of this system. It's all
no.
been a nightmare.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. I'm glad you came on and you're gonna have to let me know how you do. If parents want to reach you, Do you want them to come through me or do you want to give your email?
Sure. I'm happy to. My email is WHSEWELL at MSN.com. That's WH Sewell at MSN.com. And my direct telephone number is
Oh, don't
256.
give that out.
Oh, no? Okay.
Just trust me. Trust me. I did that when I first did my website. I was getting phone calls every 15 minutes.
No worries. Yeah.
Yes, I wouldn't do it.
I understand. But
Uh,
yes, if anyone wants to reach me, they can reach me through Miss Marilyn or via email, either one. And if anyone has any advice to give or any help to give, whether that be legal assistance, legal opinions, legal knowledge, if anyone is willing to represent me pro bono, if anyone's willing to help me financially, anything, please reach out as soon as you can. Like I said, I've got family coming into town and witnesses ready to go. I've got a hearing on Monday that's scheduled for 5 days, which it could be over in less than one, realistically. But that's
mhm.
just what this system does to people. And
A- Another tactic that they may pull on you is what they did to me when the kids wanted me to do a custody hearing. So I had it all lined up. I said, they wanted to be on the stand. And I said, well, you're old enough too, so I'll subpoena you. I'm going to subpoena everybody. So don't be afraid when you get some weird document in the mail. So when it came to that day, and I hope they don't pull this on you, but everybody took off work for me, so I had my witnesses. And a senior judge was pulled out of retirement because the other family court judge conveniently died. However, the senior judge is shady anyway. And as soon as he got on the bench, he asked if I had paid the opposing attorney $1,500, which would have been an appearance fee, like he's a movie star when we went to the custodial conciliatory court or the conference to set up this hearing. And I said, well, no, yeah, I never got a bill, right? I don't recall a bill. And I save everything in regards to court. And he said, well, you should have paid this. So now I'm going to keep everything as it is. And the order will remain the same. And he just picked up the file that was, I'm not kidding you. My file was this thick. Can anyone see that? And so he walked off. As he's walking off the bench, I yelled at him. I said, Your Honor, my children are being neglected. Then this 80-year-old bailiff, okay, it's like, why is an 80-year-old working this job? He runs up to me and he wags his finger at me. Don't you talk like that or I'm going to put you in jail, miss. And I just looked at him like, you're pathetic.
well, it's
Ah,
funny you mentioned that. I'm being threatened with jail time as well. That $25,000 guardian ad litem fee cap increase that was completely unnecessary, that was ordered by the court. I was ordered about a week and a half ago to deposit with the guardian ad litem $6,000 by this past Monday, or I would be basically within contempt of the court order. And at the bottom of the order, it states that, or I'm sorry, it's not an order. It's actually just a correspondence that says from the court that I would face up to a year in jail, $1,500 in fines, and 300 hours of community service if found in contempt.
oh, that is
So
so unconstitutional.
so I don't have the money, obviously, but I borrowed some money and I went by and I gave him a deposit of $100 and got a receipt for it. So I don't know what to do, but technically I'm kind of under the gun right now, being threatened with jail time and being drug into a final hearing with no attorney. And so that's a violation of due process rights.
Right.
So, um, when you're threatened with incarceration and you're forced into a situation where you're up against a represented person with an attorney and you have no attorney, that is I believe that's a 14th Amendment violation.
Hmm. Hmm.
And all of this is being completely overlooked. And we need people from as high as we can get them with as much power as possible to rain down on this situation and try and get justice and try and settle everything out and make it fair, because these types of events and these things are destroying families. I mean, they're
Hmm.
probably going to put me in jail on Monday when I go to that court. I mean, what's that going to do? You know?
Well, okay, this is what that's going to do. And I hope your judge is listening to this because it will affect your daughter's ACEs score, the adverse childhood experience score. In that little test, I believe it's 14 questions. You can take it too. I bet you'll rank high like I did. But having a parent incarcerated is one of the questions. And what the ACEs score does is it will shorten the child's life either through, you know, perhaps getting cancer, illnesses, because this is very stressful on anyone. And then you've got a little 7-year-old going through this. They've got to wake up and realize, let's think of the child and not put a parent in jail. This is just
Yeah. Yeah,
uh,
it's a tragedy. It really is. This little girl is so special. She's so advanced in everything that she does. She is falling behind significantly in her education. She's homeschooled by
there it
my
is.
wife, Leslie.
Right there it
So
is.
she's 7.5 years old. Her birthday is in January, and she can't read a book right now.
Okay, so there it is, because this is what these courts want to do. They want a nation of derelicts. I have talked to so many parents. I talked to one parent whose child has missed over 88 days of school. That parent who has full custody isn't even being penalized. Like, I thought parents had to go to jail if a kid was true in X amount of days. I don't know. But now, I mean, that kid is in high school and can't figure out reading issues. This is what they want. They want a nation of derelicts that they can control.
Yeah. Well, it's
I'm
very
sorry.
unfortunate. That's
I'm
all
so,
right. She's a special child, and like I said, all I've ever really wanted out of this was to be her father and have shared custody and everything just be fair. And financially, that the financial aspect of it, I'm willing to be on the losing side of that if
hmm
it means that I can be with my daughter, because
hmm
essentially we're born with nothing and we die with nothing,
hmm
and in between is just stuff. And
hmm
I can tell you that right now, the only thing in between for me is my daughter. And that's all I want. I don't care how I got into this world and I don't care how I go out, but all I do care about is being with my child. And this system that we trust, we're supposed to trust and we're paying, uh, isn't accommodating those wants and those needs. They're doing everything in their power to destroy
Right.
that.
Parents should not be paying attorney fees. That's unconstitutional. That's not even a thing. It shouldn't even be a thing. And this third party parasite guardian ad litem, he should know better. He should know better that how this is going to affect the child. Doesn't care that he's participating in child psychological abuse. And I'm so glad you came onto this podcast to spread the word.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
I totally appreciate you. So don't jump off, okay?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Slam, sure. Slam the Gavels, a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these courtrooms. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie. You can find me on Spotify, YouTube, Apple iTunes, iHeartRadio, Google, and other platforms I don't know about. Again, feel free to buy me coffee to help keep this podcast going. And, everyone have a good weekend. And I thank you, William Sewell, for speaking up. Thank
Yes,
you.
ma'am.